This is reading is the whole of chapter 9 of the Gospel of St. John. And it's really an illustration of several passages that come before. In the first chapter of John, verse 3, all things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. When God does something, all persons of the Trinity are acting. And he says in chapter 8, immediately preceding this event, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. We are in the 6th Sunday since Pascha, and the liturgical theme is one of light. So we have here a manifestation of that truth. And then immediately before this chapter, he says, before Abraham was, I am. He's expressing himself as fully God. The Gospel of John, you'll have verses that say Son of Man and then Son of God, Son of Man, Son of God. John expresses the divinity so well. Now, the commentary of Blessed Theophylact, which is a synopsis of the writings of St. John Chrysostom on the Gospels, say that this man who was born blind actually had no eyes. There's a rare condition where children are born without eyeballs. The eyelids close on empty sockets. And when he takes the clay in the spittle, the clay represents the clay that Adam was formed from. This is a creative act. He's showing himself as the creator. The Holy Trinity acting. And when he goes to the pool and washes, the man has to obey out of faith. Because Christ approached the man. He wasn't approached by him like we see in other chapters of the Gospels where lepers or blind men come to him, the woman with the issue of blood, come to him seeking healing. This is Christ approaching the man. And his disciples say, we're talking about him because they see the obvious disability. No, Christ approaches him, sees the faith, sees his strength, because immediately after this, he's challenged by the Pharisees. He's challenged to deny Christ. And the parents, as you see, back out. They're not going to have anything to do with this. But the man says he's a prophet. He said he is a prophet. He confessed Christ in the face of adversity. And being cast out of the synagogue was no small thing. You were a social outcast like the harlots and the publicans. And we see him illuminating, and then, after he has been confessed Christ, been cast out, Jesus approaches him again and says, Dost thou believe in the Son of God? He answered and said, Who is he, Lord, that I might believe in him? And Jesus said unto him, Thou hast both seen him, and he it is that talketh with thee. And he said, Lord, I believe, and he worshipped him. He's illumined in body, and he's illumined in soul. He knows Jesus as the Christ. This is illumination of soul. We have a fascinating saint in our church that exemplifies this as well. St. Matrona the Blind of Moscow. She died in 1952 in Moscow. She was born similarly without eyes, without eyeballs. And from childhood, she was one of those rare saints that exhibited grace from childhood. By the time she reached the age of 10, she was prophetically telling people things about themselves, about events to come. Grace was manifest. After the revolution, she moved to Moscow. She was from a small farming village. Her two brothers were communists. She couldn't stay with them. They wouldn't let her stay there. It's amazing to have her two brothers who had grown up with someone who was obviously so sanctified becoming communist, but that's what happened. She lived in Moscow in people's homes. And she would pray all night and receive people all day, consoling, guiding, healing. And the secret police were trying to arrest her. She always knew when they were coming with her gift of divine vision. And she was always moved somewhere else. And she would see up to 40 people a day. So there was a network of people who knew who she was, and occasionally they would inform. Someone would inform, and they'd try to find her. There was one, her biography was a woman who cared for her for a number of years and recalled what her life was like, various incidents. One incident was a agent came to arrest her, and she was there, and when he walked in, she would address people by name, people she'd never met. She knew their names, knew their problems, and knew what to tell them, how to guide them. She addressed the man by name and said, "The kerosene stove just blew up on your wife. If you get home right now, you can save her." Well, he believed her, and he went home, and she was covered with burns, and he got her to the hospital, and she was saved. Her life was saved. And he came back later and thanked her. But she had the same gift that this blind man has, where he receives eyes. She was given, by divine grace, the gift of sight. She had seen nature. She knew grass, trees, water, flowers, birds. She could describe it all. A woman came to her who was an attendant at one of the few churches that was still open at the time, and Matrona said, "Oh, I know that church." And she described all the icons, described the layout, and told her things that she answered her questions and solved her problems. And there was one incident where a student of architecture came to her, and he had some crisis about writing his thesis. And she described to him architectural monuments in Rome and Venice. One in Venice in particular, it's one of the architectural wonders of the world. I didn't write down the name. She described it in such detail, in a way that he could write in his thesis, and he worked. I actually have a friend, Father Nicholas, one of the monks of Platina Monastery, who has a story about her, because when she was buried, the cemetery became a place of pilgrimage, people from all over Russia and abroad. When communism fell, she was exhumed, and her relics were put in a church, in a convent in Moscow. And the lines there are two lines. One is to go to her reliquary, one to her icon, and they're big icons. And it takes 3 or 4 hours normally to work your way through the line. Well, Father Nicholas, fluent in Russian, he publishes the Orthodox Word, and he goes to Russia occasionally to find books, manuscripts, articles to translate and publish. Well, he got off the plane once, and he had an agonizing pain down his neck and his shoulder. It was 3 days of ice and heat, bed rested, and a throbbing, agonizing pain. And his friend said, "Oh, let's go see St. Matrona. She'll help us out." So they went. Early one morning, the line was fairly short. Within an hour, he was halfway into the church to venerate the icon. And there was a sound behind him that drew his attention. He turned to look, and the pain was gone. Not a particle of pain for the whole rest of the trip. So when he got to the icon, he thanked her for the healing. So what's the application for us? Any distress of soul or body Christ can use, and we go to him for illumination. That's how I see this. Since I ran into Orthodoxy close to 40 years ago, I've been reading the lives of the elders and saints of our church. The Optina elders, St. Silouan, St. Joseph the Hesychist, St. Porphyrios, St. Cleopa of Romania, St. Sophrony. On and on, I could give you a list. They manifest the gifts of the Holy Spirit and grace that changes people just by being around them. And we're still producing these people up to the present day. In December of 2019, Elder Ephraim of Philotheo in Arizona departed this life. When his life is written, it will look very similar to these elders and saints that I just mentioned. And he has, one of his personal disciples is Abbess Euphrasia at the St. John the Baptist Monastery in Goldendale, Washington. When you go there, you can feel the grace. We're still producing these people. It's fascinating that within Orthodoxy, the spiritual life and our theology are connected. St. Gregory Palamas, who we commemorate the second Sunday of Lent, who defended the Hesychast method, the practice of the Jesus prayer, and reaching these practitioners reached the state of theoria, of experiencing uncreated life. One such was Elder Sophrony, now St. Sophrony of Essex. And in this biography, he is quoted, St. Simeon, the theologian, who lived in the 10th, 11th centuries. In a state of theoria, he had a revelation of the Trinity. Behold, there are three in the light, the one through whom, the one within whom, and the one in whom. He sees three lights which have the same energy and the same light, but are particular hypostases. Three in one, one in three. They actually see this in divine vision. Thus, dogma and dogmatic definition is the formulation of this experience. Tell us why, when you change the formulation, you lose the experience as well. When I'm in a particular low spot, I will read this and it will give me some motivation to keep working. Do not pray for an easy life. Pray for greater strength. Do not pray for tasks equal to your powers. Pray for powers equal to your tasks. Then the doing of your work will be no miracle, but you will be the miracle. Every day you will wonder at yourself at the rightness of the life that has come to you by the grace of God. And finally he says, faith is walking to the edge of all that you have and taking one more step.